Hello again, welcome to the I Hate Drums, a beginner's guide podcast with me, Mark, your teacher for this series. In the last episode, we were combining singles, doubles, paradiddles, 8th notes, 16th notes, all kind of things together. Today, we're going to introduce the toms and start playing some fills. In previous episodes, you might have heard me use the word fill, and you might be thinking, what's a fill? The best way I can describe a fill is like this. Boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, boom, ba, boom, boom, ba, dugga, 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 dugga. So that bit on the end, that big roll using all the different toms, sometimes cymbals and things as well, that's the fill. Drummers often use fills at the end of different sections within a song. What this often does is tell the listener that something's about to change. Take, for example, a song like Smells Like Teen Spirit. All the way through the verse, the drums are going dum dum ja, dum dum ja, dum dum ja, dum dum ja. But right before the chorus, the snare drum just goes da 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 da. So even if you're hearing that song for the first time, as soon as you hear that big snare drum roll, you know something's coming. And quite often, those fills involve the toms as well as the rest of the kit. So let's get familiar with the toms. On page 52, you'll see a familiar picture of the drum kit, only this time it's the toms that have been highlighted. We have the high tom, the mid tom, and the floor tom. In terms of the notation, the high tom note lives in the top space of the stave. So it's actually in the space above the snare drum. And on the drum kit, the high tom lives above the snare drum. The floor tom lives in the space below the snare drum, but above the bass drum. Now usually on a drum kit you'll find that the snare drum and the floor tom are quite similar heights. But it is above the bass drum, so that can sometimes help you remember that placement of the note. The mid tom is the only note that has a line running through the middle of it. Okay, so you can think of it like that. Mid-tom, line running through the middle. Now sometimes you might see that mid-tom note and mistake it for a snare drum. Happens all the time. In fact, if your drum kit only has a high tom and a floor tom, then some of these fills you might want to use a snare drum instead of the mid-tom. That's fine as well. But most kits do have a high tom and a floor tom. So whenever you see those two notes, make sure you're going for the right drum. Ultimately, the thing that we're aiming for here is getting you used to moving around the kit. Now, before we begin exercise 8.1, you might want to revisit exercises 4.1 and 4.2, where we looked at those 16th note variations. Those two variations are going to reappear in exercise 8.1, only this time they're going to be played on some of the toms. Exercise 8.1 actually has 8 different exercises within it. If you look at the beginning and end of each line, you'll see repeat symbols, with the idea being that you would loop each of these lines multiple times to get familiar with those different fills. The first bar in every exercise is just that first beat that we learnt for Savannah. The focus of this lesson is really the fills, so we've kept the groove nice and simple. But it is important that you learn how to play a groove into a fill. To begin with though, you might want to focus on that second bar of each exercise and get familiar with the fill first of all, and then see if you can go from the groove into the fill. So let's take a listen to that second bar of the first exercise. And whilst we do that, see if you can follow the notation. So that fill is 2 hits on the snare, 2 hits on the high tom, 2 hits on the mid tom, and 2 hits on the floor tom. You should be able to hear that the pitch of those 3 drums is different. If your drum kit doesn't have those 3 different pitches going from high to low, you might need to tune your drums just to make them a bit more like this, because the sound that you hear will also help you get familiar with recognizing the notes. So let's try that first exercise. We're going to do this by playing along with a recording of me playing it at 60 BPM. Here we go. Okay, so some of you might have gotten to that second bar of the fill and played it twice the speed you needed to. So the important thing to remember here is that first bar, all of those hi-hats are eighth notes, which you would count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The following bar, the hits around the kit, they are also eighth notes, so they're going to be played at exactly the same speed. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now one thing to add about this fill. We are playing consecutive eighth notes, so we have two groups of 4 in this case. So for the sticking, this should be played right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. If you try this same fill beginning with the left hand, you're going to find that you need to do a lot of crossing over of the arms, and that's quite awkward when you're going clockwise around the kit. So whenever you're moving around the kit in a clockwise direction, try and start with the right hand first. Let's try it again. Here we go. Okay, moving on to the second exercise in exercise 8.1. Let's just listen to that second bar first of all. Okay, so we're starting with eighth notes on the snare drum and then the bass drum, and then we move into 16th notes on the high tom and the mid tom. This is where exercise 7.7 comes into play. Remember trying those different rate changes? That's what we've got here, 8th notes to 16th notes. So let's try this second exercise, again playing along with me at 60 BPM. Here we go. Okay, now moving on to the third exercise. I'm not going to play this one this time, but let's just discuss it briefly. The second bar where we have the fill, we have 4 16th notes on the snare drum, followed by 2 8th notes on the high tom, 4 16th notes on the mid tom, and 2 8th notes on the floor tom. So we're still working clockwise around the kit, so we should still be playing these right, left, right, left. Let's give it a go, playing along with me at 60 BPM. Here we go. Okay, now let's look at the fourth exercise here. This is where reviewing exercise 4.1 comes into play. So instead of having 1 E ander, we're going to have 1 E and. And we see that rhythm twice in this fill, the first being 3 hits on the high tom, the second being 3 hits on the floor tom. And that's followed by 2 8th notes on the snare drum, and then a single quarter note on the mid tom. So rhythmically, this fill is going to be 1 E and, 2 E and, 3 and 4. So let's give it a try with the groove, playing along with me at 60 BPM. Here we go. Okay, that leaves 4 more exercises within exercise 8.1. And I'm going to trust that your knowledge of 16th note variations, the different drums, as well as rests, is going to give you the information you need to figure these out. If you're unsure about any of those elements, you can find the information previously in the book. Also, if you want to make sure you're playing the right thing, you can get in touch with me at Instagram by going to @IHitDrums, or on Facebook by going to facebook.com/IHitDrumsUK, and for a small fee, you can send me a video of yourself playing through these exercises, and then I'll respond back with my own video with some feedback and instruction. If you feel like you're starting to struggle a little bit with this, then why not get in touch and book an online lesson with me? You can be anywhere in the world for these to take place, we just need to make sure that our schedules line up. So your practice task for this week is to work through those 8 different exercises within exercise 8.1. Next week, we're going to start working through some new key grooves that include fills so we can get you ready for the next song, which is called Tomorrow. Until then, enjoy! I Hit Drums, a beginner's guide, can be purchased through Amazon as a paperback or as an ebook through Amazon, iTunes and Kobo. Just search for I Hit Drums, a beginner's guide.